Welcome, everybody. We're going to be working on the second exercise in Unit 4. This one will basically focus on the tasks that you see here on the bullet list. Uh, we're going to open up a pre-configured spreadsheet. We're going to import data from a text file. We're going to work with filters, and we're going to do a little bit more with the filtering than we've done in the past. And then we're also going to sort the information and use the subtotal tool to create some summaries of the information. And all the files that you need are attached. The first file that you need is the PDF with the instructions. And then you'll also need this text file. And I'm going to take this one step at a time here. There's no real rush, to get it done super fast. We're not like on the clock, or anything like that. But we do want to kind of hit the main points here. There's also, as I said prior to recording, some little micro lecturing that's going to happen in the process of doing this, right? Because there's so much more to learn from like the doing of something and how you might proceed to solve a problem, because there's the approach that's listed here on this document, and then there's kind of like other common sense approaches that you might intuitively follow on your own, or maybe you already have different workflows in this product, and I'm not going to discourage that. If you basically get to the same place, it doesn't matter what pathway you take to get there. There are some pathways that are more efficient than others, but sometimes there's more than one way to accomplish a task or to get to a certain feature in Excel that makes things happen. All right, so the first thing I do want to do here is go ahead and open up the classes worksheet, which means you're going to have to grab that and download it. So you can just click here. It should come up. You can see I've already grabbed it a couple of times because I do, go through all the solutions and make sure they all work. Since this is coming in from the internet, you do want to click Enable Editing so that you can change the contents. I want you to look up front at what we're dealing with. And this is kind of something I hope becomes somewhat intuitive for you. And that is when you're being given information or given a spreadsheet, one of the first tasks you should perform is just to investigate it. Just take a look. What is this? What is it about? What information is included? Is there only one tab? What are the other tabs for if there's more than one tab? Are the tabs clearly labeled, right? And you see, we do have a spreadsheet here that does have multiple tabs. Some of them are really basically for academic reasons, and others are because it came from a different exercise set and was used for different things. What you will notice is we're still working with this fictional community of Aspen Falls and their park and rec department. We have a spreadsheet here. Apparently they have courses, instructors with fees, and there's a capacity, something about used, available, income, instructor fee, profit, loss, etc. Okay. Then we'll look at the second tab, and we see this is seemingly a table of the instructors and their fee per program offering. So if some get paid more than others, it probably depends on what they're teaching, obviously. We have a blank tab here. This is where we will take filtered information that we gather and drop into this spreadsheet, so we have a place to store it after we run our filters, right? So if you were wondering how to do that in the homework, that's the expectation. It is listed in the instructions. There's also a loss tab. That's that's a different tab for kind of doing the same thing. And then we have a data tab that has some information here about fees, capacities, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so we don't know what this information means unless there's like a manual that comes with, so we're making a lot of assumptions as we're working with it. But regardless of that fact, you can take information that you're not informed about and still make some informed decisions by looking at it, right? And this is where like the conceptual leaps start to come in, and why this is a little bit of an in-demand field. All right, so let's proceed then to the next step here in the document. Okay, start Excel, and it says click on the classes worksheet, right? So that's the first one, and click on cell A6, and then we're going to go to import data from text files. So I'm going to complete those steps here. And so they want us to click on this spot. And now the implication, if you guys aren't picking up on it, is that when we do our import, that we might be able to drop our data directly into the cell and row. Well, let's see if it actually works that way, right? And you know what? There are ways to actually do that in Excel, but you'll see from the way that the import tool operates, it's not how it's going to happen, and that's indicated in the instructions. All right, let's go to the next instruction. So we're going to pull up that import, and just so you are aware, we're going to go to the data tab to do that. And we are going to pull in this text file, but before I do any imports, I gather that most of you, because normally when you see a link, like you click on the PDF, it opens in a tab. You click on the Excel file, it downloads to your downloads folder. But you click on a text file, and this will depend on your browser now. All right, so I'm on Google Chrome, but for the most part, Safari, Edge, Chrome, maybe Firefox would all behave kind of the same way. And that is, I click on the text file and watch what happens. Oh my God, it just opened it. Okay, but okay, for not what we need. However, the information is on the screen that's in the text file. The text file is just plain text. And I'm just taking a look at it. Basic assumptions here, which is basically that I'm guessing that's a course name. I'm guessing that's an instructor, and there's some other numbers here. I'd have to look at the columns to see what those are, but there's no column indicators here. I'm also noticing that the information is separated. And if you guys remember from last time, when we were working with a CSV file, which stands for comma separated values, in the spots that I just highlighted, you would have a comma instead. This, on the other hand, is actually a tab delimited file. So the spacing is created with a tab, like a keyboard tab key press, basically. And this is not an unusual export format, by the way, for data. So like, and where it's most common to come from is from a database table. So database tables are typically tab delimited. So in other words, the pieces of information in each row in the database translates directly to a row here, but also there's a tab in between each column or field of data, if you will. Right. So even though we can't really use this like this, it's kind of helpful to look at, you know. So I'm noticing a bunch of different things. It looks like a complete data set. I'm not noticing any blank lines, right? And there's maybe 100 lines in here, something of that nature, right? Just gives me a little bit of a preview. So even though this isn't what we want by clicking the link, at least we get a sneak peek. So helpful in that capacity. One question I will get from students is, could I just highlight the stuff in here and copy and paste it into Excel? And the answer is yes, it would work. It might not be as pretty though, and you might have errors that follow, right? If it's not consistent and you paste it into Excel, you will have some issues, and that's really why we want to use the import tool inside of Excel. So let's hop back over to Excel then and do the import. So I'm going to go to the data tab, and I'm going to get data, and of course you can follow the menus, or if you notice, they actually have a button right here that says from text or CSV. So this will work with any text format. And if you notice, the file that we had grabbed does have a TXT extension on it. So it's a text file. Now, I would argue that, you know, and this is just me kind of being like maybe a little bit too particular, but I have it downloaded already a few times over, as you can imagine, and I dropped it in my folder for this semester for this unit. And before I do the import, and this is just me, right? This is not like obligatory on your part to do this, but this is how I operate. It's like if I'm importing something into something I'm working on, I want to take a look at it. We kind of looked at it in the browser, but can we look at it as a straight up text file? So I'm just going to double click and open this. And I'm not sure if this is going to open up in Notepad. Yeah, it opens up in Notepad. But this is actually enough for me to do a little bit of analysis and engineering on it just the same way I was doing in the browser. It looks just like the browser, really. But as I arrow through, so I'm using my right arrow key, and I'm getting to where I think a column break is, notice how it's jumping. That's the indicator that that's a tab stop and not a space. So I'm arrowing. That looks like a space, but that's also a tab stop. That's a tab stop. That's a tab stop. Why is it not evenly spaced out? Well, it has to do with the font and the tool that I'm using. But once again, I'm looking at the data in its raw native form to see what I'm dealing with in the file. I do have a question that's popped up. Noah?
Is it okay if I downloaded this as a PDF, or how do I make sure I download it as a text file? Mine's a PDF.
I was getting to that,
Oh, sorry.
but it's in the, but that's your, that's okay, because I'm leading there anyhow. All right, so like the question then becomes, how do I download this if I click on it and it doesn't go to my downloads folder? Or the answer is you right click and then do a save link as. Right. So I'm sorry I didn't say that first. I probably should have, Noah. So you just probably, corrected my stream of instruction here. But if you do a right click on it and save link as, and if you're on the Mac, it's an option click, by the way, right? And then you just do a save link as, and I would put it in the same spot where your homework is going. That's where I would store it. Right? You can see I already have it there. All right, back over to Excel. I'm going to proceed with the import now that I'm comfortable with what data I'm pulling in. So I'm going to click on the import tool here, select the file, click on import, and then it will go into its preliminary import tool, right? And this is not the Power Query editor. This is like the straight up import tool. Now, I've already looked at the data and I was pretty comfortable in looking at it, saying to myself, it looks well structured. There's no blank lines. It doesn't look like any information's missing or broken or they're changing formats. So instead of transforming the data, which would bring up the Power Query editor, I'm actually going to choose to load, right? You'll notice that it's picking up the text encoding, however it was put together, and the delimiter, which is a tab. Remember, we looked at this list last time, and it's looking at the first 200 rows. I would doubt there's even 200 rows to look at. Okay. So I'm just going to go ahead and click load. And when you do that, what will happen is it will actually pull it in on a separate tab. It's not dropping it right into the spreadsheet. So if that was what you thought was going to happen, sorry, not happening. That's okay. It's not a big deal. So the next step for us is to grab all the data. So instead of grabbing everything, I could click the corner, right, and grabs everything. We don't want that. We also don't want that first row because that has some like generic column names, not useful to us. But the rest of it, so if I'm going to click here, top left corner of the data, scroll all the way down, hold down the shift key, and click the bottom right corner, I have everything selected. You could also click and drag, right? But when your data set gets large, that can be really cumbersome to control because you have to keep kind of scrolling, and your scrolling's got to be really strategic with your mouse placement. Now that it's all highlighted, I'm going to do Control C to copy, or I could right click copy or go to the toolbar or whatever. I'm also noticing that it has one blank line at the bottom. So there's an extra line feed down here, but there's no data. So I'm not grabbing that. Okay. So I'm just doing a copy of the straight up data. I know it's in the copy buffer, right, in memory, being waiting to be pasted, because that marquee like dashed line is like rotating around it. I'm going to jump back over to the classes tab, and now I can paste it a few different ways. Now I want you to be mindful of this. There's the straight paste, right, which is a Control V, or if I just hit the paste button. But you guys notice in a product like this, there's more than one paste mode. And this is really powerful. And it's very different than most programs. And as you hover over the icons here, and notice I haven't pasted, but it's showing me what it's going to look like when I do. This is the regular paste. This is just to paste to formulas. Okay, well, there are none, but whatever. Or formulas and number formatting. keep source formatting, how it came in, right? No borders, keep source column widths, or transpose. In other words, instead of horizontal, turn it the other way. Not good. Notice I can also just paste the values and numbers with the formatting. And you see how it kind of keeps going on, values and source formatting, and just the formatting without the data. It gets pretty bizarre, actually. Just paste the links, paste the picture, et cetera, et cetera. So there's more than one paste in Excel. And this is really kind of an important takeaway, because there are times where the regular paste is fine. And I'm going to anticipate most of you did it this way. In fact, when I first did the exercise myself, that's the way I did it, because, hey, I copy, paste, right? You just copy, paste, right? Why would you change it any other way? Well, here's the why. What if I don't like the stripe table? And notice, now I'm just going to be striping the part that I'm importing, but not the rest of the table. Maybe that's not really the best choice. So most often, and this is something that you have to really think about when you're working with spreadsheets, is which paste option do I actually want? Now, not only can you pull the paste from the home tab menu and then this drop down, but when you're on a cell, you also have all that stuff here as well, right? And what I love about it is it does a preview for you. Now, in this circumstance, I think that probably the best paste format, and this is opinion, mind you, is just to paste the values. I also want to show you that that doesn't bring the formatting. So to me, the two choices are either with the formatting or without. So I'm going to choose to go without, because that way I don't have to worry about fixing the striping on the whole table, right? I could restripe it, but I would stripe it all at the same time, and it would be one maneuver instead of 5 maneuvers to try to fix or adjust, right? So this is kind of a common sense leap here. This is the kind of stuff that's not written into the homework descriptions, right? So, but you have to start applying that intelligence to these problems as you're kind of struggling with it, right? So my choice here is to do pasting the values only. That's what we want. We want the names of the courses, the names of the instructor, the course fee, capacity, and used. I'm assuming is how many seats were used in the classroom. So all the data's in, right? All right, so we completed that step. Maybe in a little long-winded fashion, a little more long-winded than this. You will notice that when we did do the import, right, and we can see this here as well as anywhere else, is that it pre-stripes it, it turns on filters, it didn't know what the column names should be. I could have adjusted all that in the Power Query editor, but you know what? We were importing it into a table that already existed, so there was no reason to do that, right? All right, so go in, we did our paste, right? And there's the data. And notice how the data came in, right? It's not striped here. So if you brought it in striped, not a big deal, by the way. That's okay. I'm not going to downgrade you for it because it really specifically did not say to just grab the values. But I think it's helpful to know that you can do that. Okay, so let's just make sure everybody got that. Everybody's okay with that? Got the data imported and pasted in, okay? All right, so next thing we're going to do is we're going to start applying filters. And what they want us to do is to create a custom filter where the instructor is Jules or Lisa, right? And when we move the data from this tab, well, in this tab, it already has the filters turned on. So I could do the filtering here, right? But that's not what we're being asked to do. We want to filter in this spot, but there's no filter tools turned on. So here's where you got to be kind of careful where your mouse position is. So I want you to watch what happens when I click on the title, And then I go either to the data tab and choose filter or choose the filter from here. I'm going to do it from the data tab because it's got a nice big button, and I'm going to show you why this is useful. So I'm going to hit that button, and where is it trying to apply the filter? Like right on the box that I had selected. So if you had the same box selected, well, I got a filter. It's not going to be a very exciting one, you know. So let's cancel that out. And here's the why I like this mode is because I can just turn those filters on and off, right? So turn it on, turn it off. And you notice when it's on, it's got a little box drawn around it. Now I'm in dark mode on my machine, right? My theme is in dark mode. I know a lot of you operate that way, but if you're in light mode, it's there's still a highlight. All right. What we want to filter on actually is instructor. So there's a couple different schools of thought on how to do this. Like some people will highlight the whole range or something like that. But the truth is you just need to be in the column to filter it. So I'm going to go ahead and click filter. Notice it turned on filters for everything, right? So the generic filter command will do that. Now I can come up here and start to select those particular things. And I want you to notice that you would begin by deselecting select all. We don't want everybody. We just want Jules and Lisa. That's what was shown in the example. So I just have those two instructors chosen on the list, right? And then I just click OK, and here they are. Now it shows all the courses they're teaching, course fees, capacity, and how many spaces were used in those courses. All right, so let's see what the next instruction is. All right. Next, they want us to filter by course fee. So this is something that's kind of new for us. So like we can filter by the fee, right? Like, so there might be a specific amount. We can hit the little check boxes, but we want something a little more specific. We want fees that are greater than or equal to 50. So the way that you'll do that is you go here to fees and we'll use a number filter. And notice how they have a bunch of predefined stuff here, right? A lot of it is very intuitive. So, and the one that we want is right on the list, greater than or equal to. It matches the exact syntax. But I do want you to notice that if you don't find what you need here, then you have to go into the custom filter and build it from scratch. I'm just going to bring it up so you can see what this interface looks like. We touched this very briefly last week, right? But that's not how we're going to do it. Since what we want is on the quick list, let's use it. Why not, right? So notice it brings up the same tool, right? Is greater than or equal to 50. I'm just going to say okay, and then that narrowed down our course list just a little bit more. Okay, so that's applying filters for instructors and filters for the course fees greater than or equal to 50. Now what they want you to do is select basically the whole top part of the spreadsheet. So they want you to go from, and I want you to look at the syntax here just so you guys are clear on this, from cell A1, the top leftmost corner, down to I60. And what that means is you're including that whole range, right? All the columns and all the rows. Now, granted, we're not selecting all the rows. We're just grabbing the part that's visible. So when we highlight this and copy it, it's only going to grab the visible parts, not the other columns and rows and whatever that are hidden. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. So from A1 down to I60. Control C to copy. You see the marquee. And then come over to your filtered tab, which is one of the blank ones, and paste, right? And there you see the result of your filter, right? So when I will be grading your homework on this, I'm going to be looking here for this. Now, why? Okay, the why is because there's another filtering that we have to do and subtotaling that we have to do that will pollute these results. So I'm not sure how you guys handled it when you turned in your work, but hopefully you picked up on the fact that it should go on the filtered tab. All right, so copy it, click the filtered worksheet tab, paste the stuff in. The formatting should all come with, right? And see, this is one of the advantages of the paste that brings the formatting, because the whole layout follows. Columns, the rows, the fonts, the sizes, the underlines, the table striping, all of that will follow. So now we got an example really of like when you copy and paste the data, when is it bringing in the formatting and when is it not? You can see that. I mean, it's helpful that we brought it over and it still looks like the main spreadsheet, right? It still looks good. So that's an intelligent approach here, is to paste with the formatting. On this one, it was more intelligent to just paste the data. You could argue it would have looked good with the striping. Yeah, maybe. Maybe. Right. So that gets into opinion, I suppose. All right. Now go back to the classes worksheet tab and escape from the selected area. Click the data tab and then click the filter basically to remove the custom filter so you can see everything once again. So I'm going to go back and do that. So back to the classes tab on the bottom, make sure you're there. I'm going to press escape. Notice what that does. It turns off the marquee that shows that we're in copy mode. So that's no longer in the copy paste buffer for pasting. Or is it? That's not. See, I just tried to paste and it didn't do it. All right. Then if you come up here and click the filter button, the big one, we have two filters running, right? One on instructors and one on fees. That removes both of them. And now we see the whole data set again. That's why I like this view, right? Whereas if you're on the home tab and working with the filter, it's not that you can't turn it on and off, but there's an extra click to get there. So that's why, well, I guess you have to click on this too. That's 2 clicks either way. But if you're working with data and you're already doing the import, you know, et cetera, and we're pretty soon we're going to be doing subtotal and a couple of other things. It's just a handy little feature, right? So you filter stuff, turn the filter off. Filter stuff, turn the filter off. Right? I think that's very handy. So we're back to normal again. All right, so next we want to filter for courses that begin with the word basic. All right, so this will have us building a custom filter. So we want to filter stuff in this column. You can go to the title, you can go to any part of the data. Go ahead and hit filter. And let's do a text filter. Notice how it's recognizing that it's text. And notice some of the options here: equals, does not equal, begins with, ends with, contains, does not contain, or a custom filter, right? And once again, they'll all end up bringing up the same dialogue basically. But what we're looking for, we were told that it should begins with, right? And in the example, they use a capital B. And of course, my snarky approach is, let's try a lowercase b and see if that works, right? And it will, right? Because it doesn't really care about upper or lowercase, but begins with basic. I'm not going to type anything else. I'm not adding a space. There's no double quotes. We're not in a programming language here, folks, right? We're just typing in the text, clicking OK, and there come all the courses that begin with the keyword basic. Now, this is not written into the instruction, the next step I'm about to take, because they want us to go back to the data and then sort and whatever. I mean, how am I supposed to see that you guys did this successfully? Here's my suggestion, by the way, is now that you have your results, you can copy that whole block of information again. And if you want, this is the way I did it when I did my version, is I just copied this part, just the data rows. Then I went over to the filtered table, and then I just pasted it in down here. And then if you want to label it, begins with basic, just so I can see that you were able to do it. How you label stuff, you know, is really kind of up to you. I do want you to kind of keep in mind here, right, that you can type on the spreadsheet and say basic filter ... or whatever, and you could, you know, color it, label it, make it look nice so I could see it. Another approach, if you wanted to insert information for me to read in here, and a lot of people aren't aware that you can do this stuff, but you can also add like pictures and shapes and weird things like that. But one of my favorite things to throw in an Excel spreadsheet is a text box. So you can say top data in the table is the first filtering exercise. Bottom set of data is the begins with basic filter, something like that. But and by the way, you can get fancy with these boxes. You can like unlike regular Excel stuff, you can move it around. You can change the fonts, you can change the colors, you can give it a fill, you can give it an outline. Oh my God, you can do all sorts of stuff. But the whole point is if you want to convey information, this is kind of a way you can do it. Another way you can do it is you can just type on the spreadsheet. That's fine too. Right? I just want to show you that it's a possibility. Okay. Let's move on to the next task here. So sort the data and use the subtotal tool to summarize the data. All right, so what we're going to do first is we're going to remove all the filters. So I'm going to go back to the data tab here. I'm going to undo the filter that we just created. We've already captured this output right on the filtered tab. So we're back to the original data set. We've got it all set to go here to do our next step. Next thing they want us to do is, it says, when data is grouped, you can use the Excel subtotal tool to display summary statistics, sums, and counts, for example, for each group. Before adding subtotals to the tabular data, rows need to be sorted by the column being subtotaled. So for example, if I want to create totals by class, I would sort the classes. If I want to create totals or subtotals by instructor, I sort the instructors. That's kind of what it's telling us here. Or if I wanted to sort by like the cost of a course, then I would sort that. We're told to sort by instructors, so let's do it. All right, so I'm going to go to the instructor column, and I can just go right to the sort tool here, and I can sort A to Z, and the instructor column is now sorted. And notice it's using the first name for the sort. It doesn't matter, but notice as you scroll through the list now that all the instructors' courses are grouped for each instructor. Now you can see why that's helpful for doing a subtotal right off the bat, because if I want to look at instructor totals, they're already grouped. The sorting is an important step. The one thing you have to remember about when you're doing sorting, and this is important, is that you have to have a contiguous data set. It's got to be, you can't have blank rows or missing data. So if I had like one, I don't know who taught that one, it's blank, it's not going to sort, or it's not going to sort correctly or completely. So you have to make sure you have no blanks, right? You have to have a complete data set. All right, let's move on to the next instruction. Okay, now that we've sorted the data, we can create subtotals for each instructor. Click on A6 and then click in the outline group subtotal. Okay, so A6 is right here. And then this is once again on the data tab, and I'm sorry that I obscured that. I did not mean to do that. You'll notice that there's a subtotal tool. And by the way, if you're not seeing the subtotal tool, make sure that your ribbon bar is turned on. And I don't know if you guys caught what I just did, and I did it very accidentally, is you could be in this mode, right? Where your ribbon bar is hidden and it only shows when you click on the menu. At least for, in my opinion, I like to have the ribbon bar on all the time, right? I've gotten used to it now. I used to hate it, but now I like it, right? And so I recommend that you have it on. Another concern is I'm on a widescreen monitor, and it's not like super wide. It's 1920 wide if you're counting the pixels. And I want you to notice what happens when I leave full screen, though, that some of the tools start to disappear from the toolbar or get combined. So for example, the subtotal tool that we're about to use is in the outline section. Doesn't mean that's the only tool here. And there's these little boxes that show you other things that you can do with that menu if it's not showing, or you get like the drop downs. For example, if I truncate it to there, then I can still get the subtotal tool this way. If you still don't see it on your menu bars, you can always search for it, right? And I just started typing sub and it finds it, and then it brings up the tool, right? Right. So they told us to click in A6, right? And the reason for that, by the way, is they want you to be in the data set. That's the reason. Like somewhere within this data, like this contiguous block of data, you want to be somewhere within it. That's why they're putting you there. Now we're going to click the subtotal tool. And I'm going to go ahead and take a look here at this because we were told to click very specific boxes, right? So we are told that each change in instructor, right now it's set for course. Why? Because we clicked in the course column. So we want to change that actually to instructor. We're going to use which function. Notice there's sum, count, average, max, min, and product. And actually that's not all, right? There's a bunch of stuff like statistical, variances and standard deviation and et cetera, but we're going to stick with sum. And then we also want to check income, instructor fee, profit loss. So income, instructor fee, profit loss, right? If there's current subtotals, we're going to replace them. And we're going to have a summary below the data. I'm going to go ahead and click OK on this. You're going to see what the result of this is. This is a very interesting tool, by the way. So remember, we started by sorting the instructors, right? Because that was necessary. We also had a contiguous set of data with no blanks, no omitted data. Then we run the subtotal tool, and I want you to be mindful of what category it's in. It's under the outline tool. So what this does is it is organizing us or creating an outline based on the instructor, right? And then what it's going to do is that for each instructor, it's going to come up with totals. Now, I'm noticing a problem. You guys noticing what the problem is? It's not totaling anything, is it? Right. Okay. Well, okay. So here's what I'm going to say. If for those of you that did the assignment already and ran it like this, with blank numbers, I don't care, honestly, right? Because it was more about using the subtotal tool. But if you were doing this for real, I would Control Z. I would get rid of the subtotals, right? And the next thing I would do is I would Control Z again. I don't know if I can. I go back. Nope, it's not letting me go back. But we want to basically take these formulas here and propagate them through the whole table. What were we sorted on before? Were we sorted on anything? Let's think about this for a second. Okay. Can we take a look at these formulas here? Are these formulas relevant? It seems like they are, right? There's like a lookup that's happening. There's a little difference, a little multiplication, another difference. Could I take this formula and copy it down? And I'm using that technique again, right? Maybe I'm not being super efficient about this because now what's happening is all this stuff's blank. Well, because the formulas are written well, somebody else wrote them for us, by the way, I can just paste them in. And here's another trick. Can I do all of these at once? Did you guys catch that slick trick? I highlighted 4 columns, each with a formula, and double click the little box in the corner. I'll do that again, right? And it just filled up all the formulas all the way down the page where it was blank. But now the formulas have numbers in them, right? So whatever, seats were available is a byproduct of how many seats were used and what the capacity was. The income from the course based upon the fee times the number of seats, right? And you can verify these formulas. And then we have the instructor fee. Well, how do we know what the instructor fee is? Well, look, there's a lookup right here, right? Here's the fee for the instructors. Now, this is kind of interesting because when we've done a VLOOKUP before, think about how we did this. The lookup tables were on the same sheet, but now it's on a different sheet. So you can still do that. And I just want you to look at the syntax of this really carefully. It does it includes not only the columns and the rows, but the table, or excuse me, the tab name called lookup. Now that just happens to be called the same thing as VLOOKUP, but that's so you can look up the instructor fee. You don't have to have this on the same tab, right? But we're still able to do the lookup over here to see it. And then finally, the profit and loss is just the income minus the expenses, which is the instructor fee. So this is how much money they're making. Okay. Right. So that's not the main point of the assignment, but if you were given a set of data like this and you did have at least one row of formula correct, it's really easy to propagate it down if your data is contiguous. Once again, if it's continuous data, very easy to do that. Now, let's run that subtotal tool, and I'm going to use the same settings here. I'm just verifying them. I'm going to click OK, and now I have totals for all the instructors. And I would say this is more useful, right?
Could you
So
show
now
me
I
those settings one more time? I
sure thing.
missed it.
Yeah. And by the way, Noah, this is in the instruction document, the settings.
Oh, okay. My bad.
Not a problem. I mean, because it doesn't take much to have it up on screen there, but it's instructor, sum, income, fee, and profit loss, right? Replace and summary below data, and I just click OK. Now, notice there is a remove all button here. So if I want to get rid of this, this is where you do it. Right? I'm just going to try that just to show you, and then I'm going to recreate it again. But what I think is fascinating about this being an outlining tool is now I can look and see like what the gross revenue was, how much money the instructor got paid, and what the profit or loss was for Parks and Rec, right? And it's by instructor with a nice little listing. I want you to notice, because this is an outlining tool, it has also got this little hierarchy thing on the sidebar. This is kind of interesting too. So for example, there's different levels here. I can collapse some of these levels. This is why this gets pretty useful. If I just want to look at the grand totals for everybody, I can get rid of all the detailed courses. Now I can just see how much each instructor made us with their courses and the grand total. It's a much more concise list. That's kind of cool, right? If I want to expand to level 3 and see the courses per course, I can do that. I can also collapse it down to the first level, which is just the grand totals. So the little toolbar here on the side is very useful. We did 3 levels of this, right? So if you look at the subtotal tool, we did sums for these 3 items: income, instructor fee, profit loss, right? So we have these levels here, and you can add more. You can do all sorts of interesting stuff with this for sure. So that's really kind of where we take this to. That's where the assignment ends, like just getting it into this form. You'll notice the example doesn't have totals, but from a practical sense, what was the reason for doing all that work if we weren't looking for the totals? If you guys feel where I'm going with that. So if you turned it in without the totals, I'm actually okay with it. But if you want to include the totals and get those in there, I would encourage you to do it. And if you want to resubmit it, I haven't graded it yet. I always grade the last submission. But that's the solution then for the second exercise in this unit. So this video will end